I want you to think briefly. When you first began in spiritual life, go back to the moment that you can recognize when you first started into this trip, and see the process by which your life became more intense. That moment when it clicked for you, whatever that click means. And remember, to each one of us would be a different thing. And I'm not even saying experience, a different thing. There is a moment where you recognized that you were on the way. Whatever that was for you, go back to that moment and see if your life has become more and more intense after that moment. It's been a crescendo of intensity. And through that period, you have a crescendo, you got used to the crescendo, and then you thought, well, I'm in a plateau. And you thought you were going back to where you started from. It was no intensity. But look at it, and it's a crescendo of intensity. And that's because once we start on the spiritual life, life is no longer measured by years. It's measured by intensity. It no longer matters how many years we stay in this parenthesis, but how intense that life is. It is the intensity that matters, not the length of the years. There's another thing which is very important. Before that moment in your life and mine, we were like leaves at the mercy of the wind. It took us wherever. As we go into spiritual life, as we become aware, consciously aware of it, we stop becoming a leaf in the wind to become the wind itself. Now, I had this very intense feeling that we have arrived at a crossroads in the infinite way. That many more of you will go into a period of what I would call intense introspection. To come out of it to do what you must here. We are going through the transition of the passivity of the spiritual life into the activity of it. And by this I don't mean that we're going out and proselyte. You know, that's the only thing that we cannot do. But I have this very intense vision that we're getting into a very intense stage of activity within ourselves and within our activities in the society in which we live. Very much more than I've ever felt it. Today, when I was this 45 minutes I was in my room, which were like 45 days, I felt very strongly two things. One, this morning or this afternoon, whatever it was, this morning, someone asked me, how did I feel about my first class? And I answered, it felt like nothing. Not that it's a negative attitude. It feels like the water on a stream that is running its course naturally. And the water, when it's going through the stream, it doesn't feel anything. It is just the water flowing, changing its path, fulfilling itself as a stream that feeds the soil and moves on. And for one single minute, I dare to look back and question it. For one single second, and I felt a very intense jolt of pain, which is going to asking the waterfall, the water has fallen to retrace its steps. It's impossible. It's impossible. You can't go back. And try it. And you get the thunderbolt. You see, and here is the meaning of pain in the spiritual life. We normally tend to run away from pain, which is natural. But we have to get to the point that rather than running away from it, we sit still and look at it with no judgment, with no resistance. And if we can, we should ask the question, what is the meaning of it? Pain has a very definite place in the spiritual life, and it's not negative. The one thing the spiritual life has is that we transcend the opposites. Things are no longer difficult, but they are no longer easy. They just are. And we run into problems when we want to think it's difficult, or when we think it's easy. It's neither. And the same thing when we go through pain. Think of a butterfly coming out of the cocoon. Is it having pain? I don't know. It doesn't look very comfortable. But it has no choice. It has no choice but to come out of the cocoon, and once it comes out, it has to fly. It has no choice but flying. And that is the way, whether we like it or not, that is our process. We are gently breaking the shell of the cocoon. And sooner or later, you will have to fly. Sooner or later, all of us, that's our destiny. And it's something we cannot resist. And try if you can. Think of that butterfly coming out of the cocoon in a tree. I wonder if the butterfly dares to look down. It just looks up and moves its wings and flies. And we are at that very edge. We are at the point of no return. And I don't like to say we are at the point of no return, because there's no return no matter what. There's no return. We move forward whether we like it or not. That's the only destiny. We are destined to move forward. And I have this intense feeling that we are all at that very edge. Going through the stage of deep introspection to come out of it. To come out to full expression. And whatever project or way or whatever we undertake or the process undertakes for us, a lot of our lives are going to be changed radically. And we must be prepared for it. It isn't easy to come out to teach the infinite way, or whatever this way is. But it isn't difficult. It's neither. It's just like the water flowing forth. It has no choice. It goes with the gravity. It just flows. We as humans do have the capacity to look back. But again, it has its own safeguards. You get a jolt of pain that puts you right on course. And is it a dark pain? It isn't. It's a clear, crystal blue pain coming forth. You see, pain begins to lose the meaning that we were given through social conditioning, or the so-called dark nights of the soul. In the beginning, yes, pain is that resistance to the old concepts. We resist to shed those old concepts like a snake. I mean, the skin is coming up and we're just putting it back. And when we can't, we just go to the 5 and 10 and buy easy glue and glue it back. But it comes off. No matter what, it comes off. And what happens? You grow. There are some insects, and not insects like the how do you call them in English? I'm thinking of them in Spanish. The langostas, the seafood that we eat, the lobsters. You know, in order for the lobster to grow, they have to shed their shell in several stages through their life. I mean, the lobster grows in and eventually snaps out the shell, and then it grows a new one. That's the way we grow. Sometimes we shed our shells very easily, but 99% of the time, we do it the hard way. And that's a dark night. As you do it more and more and more, you become more accepting of the pain. Not that you enjoy it. It's not an enjoyable thing, but it's not non-enjoyable. You begin to recognize the sign. And as you recognize the sign, you gird yourself with patience to let it come off. And as we grow into the new spiritual body, we have new projects unfolding. No one for himself dieth, and no one for himself liveth. We do not live for ourselves, we do not die for ourselves. The process is of giving yourself, God's self, to all. You will not have a spiritual unfoldment for yourself. That's an impossibility. You have your spiritual unfoldment to share it with those who come to you, or to those that you're brought to. There is no way you can have it for yourselves. You'll explode in mid-air. I think Joel talked about it in the tape. You can't. But you feel the current of change in the way the infinite way is expressed. And this doesn't mean that those who have done it before us have done a bad job. As a matter of fact, they've done a tremendous job. And it's their very unfoldment that brings our unfoldment to fruition. They have prepared the way, and therefore our way is a lot easier. And talk to those old men and women who began in the infinite way, to see the heartache they've gone through. I mean, they, in many ways, they plow the soil with their teeth, because it was not easy to change the attitudes that they grew up with for years and years and years and years. Joel brought in a tremendous unfoldment, but they had to put it into practice. And they spent 40 years working with this. I mean, the hard way. And they brought into fruition a world for us. It's a circle of Christhood that surrounds the whole earth. We just have to become aware of it, and you are plugged into it. And are fed immediately by it. You can be in the most remote land on earth today and have the blessings and the benefits and everything that it brings with it. And if your teacher has to move over there, you'll find your teacher. Or if you are moved, as it happened to me, to my teachers. How? If you ask me, I have no idea. Or I must have done something right. I must have done something right, or it did it itself. You see, and it was a lot easier way. Now, you people who have children, you're holding those kids in meditation. To them it's going to be a lot easier than it was to us. To the point that some of them are going to be born in meditation, and they would not even have any recollection of anything. They just walk into it. And sometimes, if you're selfish about it, you would even get angry, because to them it's so easy, they just walked into it. And you know, you had to open the door and jump. Because many times we're afraid to jump, even though we're seeing the light coming through. We were afraid of the very light. We were afraid of ourselves, of our feelings. And now it's a lot, it just flows. But the cocoon is about to open. And you must be ready for it. And again, I tell you, I don't know whether it's painful when the cocoon opens up. I have never asked the butterfly. I know for myself that it was painful for me when I held to the old belief. And the moment of recognition that there was nothing to it just shook the whole thing off. Or looking at the experience called death. When you look at it, when you're afraid of illness, and you look at it, just look around, and you find very healthy people in your lives that they were absolutely healthy from one moment to the next and they were gone. And then you have people who've been dying for years and years and years and years and years and they are still kicking. And then you say, what can I be afraid of? No matter which way I want to take, I have no power over it. The only thing we can do is rest in the realization of I. And whatever it is, you walk. That's all there is to it. And what is it if, as it happened to me, when some friends were running away from the earthquakes? What about, here I am asking God to use me, and what about if I have to go to the San Andreas Fault? If that is where God wants me to be, am I going to run away from it to the safe lands, the so-called safe lands? The only safe land is the holy ground within you. So, you begin to look at yourselves for what you are. We are coming out of the cocoon, whether we like it or not. This is something we have no choice about. And it's funny, in life we have no choices. That's another myth. You can resist and suffer the pain, but the process of individuation pushes forth. And you'll have greater pain until it breaks forth. I think Carl Jung put it beautifully when he said, if you don't follow your process of individuation, it'll drag you. And that's the very purpose of our lives. We are the glory of God. Why not let it be shouted from the rooftops in the silence and secrecy of our hearts? It shouts itself. It shouts itself without a word. And sometimes we're just afraid. Because, well, if we are chosen to do something, my life is going to turn in a 180-degree angle. What am I going to do? Joel repeated many, many times, if the way does not provide for the wayfarer, it's not a way to fare upon. The way will take you. It will feed you, it will clothe you, and it will take you. Don't be too choosy about it. When I was chosen to go to school, to go to college, I knew I wanted to go to college, but I didn't know where. And I had the experience that told me, you're going right here. And I looked at within myself and I said, so be it. But I didn't really believe it. Then came my crisis, and I knew I could not even go to school part-time. I had to go to school full-time. And I stopped working and lived with a part-time job for years. I moved to one of the New York ghettos to live that life that I didn't quite know what it was, but it was something which I must do, which I couldn't go back to, and I didn't want to go back to. And for many years I was fed, clothed, and everything was taken care of. It did not come from Bloomingdale's. But I'll tell you, I lived as the wealthiest man on earth. Everything I wanted to do, or I thought I wanted to do, you really never want to do anything. It does itself for you, and in the process, you're fulfilled. That's the added thing. Everything was taken care of for years and years and years and years and years, up to today. Every single day of the week. Even when the experiences of pain came through. Everything was provided for. Here you have your food so you can enjoy your pain. You see, it's that process, the way that does not provide for the wayfarer is not a way to fare upon. Now, don't put buts on the process. Don't want your clothing from Bloomingdale's. Let it come. And you will be clothed, and you will be fed, and the supply will come through. 5 minutes ago, I didn't have an idea what I was going to talk about. But it's the very process of what we are. Right now, we are of one consciousness becoming aware of itself, fulfilling itself as I, becoming aware that the cocoon is beginning to break open. And eventually, one wing comes out, and then the other. And once the two wings are out, you better fly. Hermann Hesse comes back to my mind. Whatever, I can't remember, one of his books. He talks about of this man who falls in love with the star. And the intensity of the love is so great, the man begins to fly towards the star. As he's flying, he doubts, and he falls in the abyss. That doesn't mean that we're falling. We really never fall. That's as impossible as anything. Consciousness is an irreversible process. If we doubt, we will have pain. But it doesn't mean that we'll not get to our ultimate goal. The ultimate goal is within us, and we all have the fuel to get there. We all come with that fuel. But as we doubt, we have the pains, and then we have better learn to enjoy them. There's nothing wrong with that. That's how we learned. I remember many years ago, as I told some of you last night, in my very own experience, One of my most so-called painful experiences was when I attempted suicide many years ago. Do I regret it? No. No. Why not? I'll tell you, when I went to work with clients and with dropouts, and when they came with their pain, I could look at them straight in the face and say to them, so what? And when you say that so what with energy, with the energy of experience, the jolt of electricity they get is so powerful that they are healed instantaneously. When you can look at somebody straight in the face and tell them, so what? I am your resurrection. I've been there, and I came out of it. There's nothing to it. There is absolutely nothing to it. The very life of God that I experienced going down to hell, I experienced coming out of it. God is there just the same. Because you are that very God. The very self of you is that very God. And those experiences become the stumbling blocks, the stepping stones. Those stumbling blocks becomes your stepping stones. And there are no regrets. I don't have the least regret of the experiences I've gone through. I came out of it with light years of unfoldment after I came out of the whole thing. The intensity. You see, if I was a shooting star before the experience, I was a morning star after it. It's a whole transformation. The depth, the love, the intensity of the experience. Pain, there is nothing wrong with pain. When we look at it for what it is, it's energy. It's pure fuel. Once we transmute the fuel, again, the alchemical experience is transmuted into gold. It's the philosopher's stone. It becomes that energy that becomes the intensity of your life. The search for God became more intense. We are all in that very process. In a parenthesis, we live and we die many times. And when we see one of our close ones move on, if we have learned to live and die many times, we just say, I'll take it easy, I'll see you later. Because it's just that experience. They are as alive now as they were before. I say to you now, as I said this morning, my father, my so-called biological father, is present right here and now. I can feel his presence so intensely, and his joy. And he was a man who did not know, I never heard him talking about God or religion or going to church. He never talked about those things. But his life was a demonstration of it without a word. Life is measured by intensity and not by years any longer. Get used to that idea. Because once you get one wing out of that cocoon, you are going to fly. And it's a very powerful experience. It's a very joyful experience. It does have pain, but it no longer is the pain we knew in the past. It's what I would say is a crystal clear pain. It's intense, and take it for what it is. It's pure energy. And it's important to know that there's no way back. And it never was. But we always thought, yes, there was a way back. I have a choice. No one has a choice. Consciousness is an irreversible process. It can only go forward, whatever that means. And you can tie this to this morning's class, to play, to the joy of being, and see yourself soaring forward on the blue skies towards the sun. See yourself doing that in our projects, because the projects unfold and unfold and unfold and unfold and unfold and unfold. You finish with one project and you move into the other, and before you're finished, the other project is moving on. And you wonder sometimes whether you have all the energy to do all these things. And whenever you wonder, remember, you come in with the fuel. Not one in this whole earth did not come in with the fuel. Not one in this whole earth does not have a gift. Not a single human being. We all have it. It's all there. And that is the meaning of the resurrection. When you're resurrected from the tomb of your body, which is not death, it's the breaking off of the cocoon. And you are that gentle butterfly, which is infinitely strong. You are that gentle flower, breaking forth of that intensely tight bud. And it breaks forth and it opens up. And it lasts but a few days. What is it that lasts but a few days? The experience, the project. Once the project is fulfilled, the next one comes. And this is the infinite process of life that we are. We are saddened because, oh my God, it's withered and died. The project is finished. But look at it. The other one begins to come out, the other bud, and it opens up, and it goes through the same process, and each one is different. How many of us are going far away to fulfill this very process? Or how many of us are going to stay right here where we are, fulfilling it, doing it, but intensely doing it? And I'm telling you, it's not something that is not intense. It's extremely intense. The intensity of the spiritual life is tremendous. You can live light years in a week. that intense. In 1 year, look back. Even right now, look back in your life and see yourself a year ago and see how many things you have done. The more you go into this, it multiplies. It multiplies, and it multiplies, and it becomes more and more intense. The joy is more intense, the projects are more intense, and you become highly effective. Whatever you do becomes highly effective. You become just like an eagle soaring through the mountains towards the sun. There is no fear, and there is joy. There is that joy of life that is what you are. We are the glory of God. Each one of us, each one and every one of us, all over the globe, everywhere, is the joy of God, is the glory of God. God fulfilling itself, glorifying itself. And as they become aware of their true identity through right identification, which is what when we do it, and as we do it, that circle of Christhood becomes more intense in their experience. And there we see the liberation movements in South Africa. Sometimes I wonder, when Joel went to South Africa, what that very process did to the consciousness of the country. The old structures began to collapse. We think of the so-called liberation theology that is shaking half of the earth. And people say, well, violence. Well, all the structures are collapsing. All the structures. And people are beginning to recognize themselves as children of God, as the very light breaking forth. Think what this is happening, and this began in 1968. Think of all this movement, of all these people recognizing themselves as the co-creators of the earth. What is our job? What is our contribution to it? Every time we meditate, we bring that moment closer for us and for the whole world. Because no one for himself dieth, and no one for himself liveth. If we live, we all live as one. This is the circle of Christhood that we've been working. That those men and women who first began in the infinite way started to build. And no matter where you are, once you have your first inkling of another life, it's like if you have a feeding line that comes down from heaven and begins to feed you slowly, 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 and the preparation begins. And then one day, a book falls in your hands, or a pamphlet. And next time, you realize that the book has become your teacher, which is the consciousness of Joel, or of Buddha, or of Jesus, or whoever. And the next day, you encounter someone on the way, and you find yourself in a class. But what is the purpose that you spend years and years and years and years going to a class? So one day, on one way or another, you also become teachers. And I don't mean teachers the way I'm doing it right now. That might be a way. But teaching is, again, not a thing that you just do directly. You also teach silently and secretly when you're meditating. You don't know whom your meditation is touching at any moment, any place in this earth. You see, you will not always be students. There comes a moment of graduation, and then we go about our business. We are the world. We are those waters, those living waters. And I'll tell you, you don't have to announce it. You find yourself on any corner many times, and somebody comes to you to drink. They see yourself as a water fountain, and you just didn't know it until somebody begins to draw it from you. But when anybody comes, give freely. Give freely. This is the only thing that you must do. Give freely to those who need what you have. Sometimes you do it silently and secretly, but sometimes you are in a position where somebody comes to you and asks you, teach me. Or somebody comes to you and asks you, give me a treatment. Don't ever deny it to anybody. If anybody comes to you and tells you, give me a treatment, yes, I will. And to the best you know how, you give it. To the best you know how. You cannot do more than that. People will ask you for treatments. People will ask you to pray for them. And then you give them to the best you know how. And sometimes all you have is a book or a pamphlet. And sometimes just a silent treatment. You will make mistakes, you will. But mistakes, there's nothing wrong with mistakes. Failure is a very beautiful thing. A person who fails is because he or she has tried. And you cannot ask anymore. And only the people who succeed are those who have tried and failed many times. Don't think that because you are on the spiritual path, you're not going to fail. You are. We all are. We all have, and we all will. There's nothing wrong with that. You're not gliding all the time. Many times you have to go up the mountain and it's rocky and you're barefooted. And you go up the mountain with the trail of blood behind. with mistakes, but mistakes are the trials to succeed. And those are our failures, and eventually we succeed because we have no choice. We have no choice but fulfillment. That is the very nature of our lives. We are the fulfillment of God. We are the glory of God. God glorifies itself as us. And there comes the forgiveness. And there comes the patience. And there comes the fulfillment. And then we become in turn patient with others, because you see yourself the way you were. Whenever we become impatient with anybody, look back, remember the way you were, and immediately you become very patient. Whenever we become self-righteous, look back and look at the way you were, and then you'll shut up. And we are all, one way or another, self-righteous. Even when we open our television set and look at all these new religions bursting forth through the tube, don't condemn them. We were that way, whether in this lifetime or another lifetime. Just go within and don't react to it. Non-reaction. Whenever we see the winds of war, non-reaction. Non-reaction. It changes. It changes the course of history. Non-reaction. Silently and secretly. Non-reaction. That's the process we are. And this is why many times you go into meditation and there are no feelings. It's just the vacuum. That's one of the most intense experiences, because we are socially conditioned to be with a group and we must talk. We go into meditation and we must have an experience that we already have built expectations for it. We need the light breaking through the cloud just as we had it in the movies. We need the feeling of goodness. And in fact, we are neither good nor evil. We just are. How else can God speak through us but through the vacuum? And how does God speak? Well, if you need words, you'll have words. But mostly, God speaks as self-expression. God expresses itself as us. Rather than worrying whether the vacuum is going to be filled with roses, sit on it. and enjoy it. Sit on it and enjoy it. Look at it. The vacuum is clear. There's nothing in it. It's absolute emptiness. And that's when the vessel is ready to be filled. How is it going to be filled? I have no idea. That's for you to find out. That's for each one of us to find out. It's going to be filled many times, infinite times, as it has from the beginning. If we had the capacity to remember other lifetimes, we would see that vacuum being filled and empty many times. Many times. It's an endless, it's an infinite time and time and time, and it will be infinitely filled and empty time and time again. These are all our experiences on the three-dimensional world and on the fourth-dimensional life. We will constantly be filled. We have zillions of projects waiting at the threshold of our consciousness to be expressed, to be fulfilled. That's our purpose in the universe, in the universal plan. Some of us, or most of us, are fulfilling some of it. But let's not sit on those laurels, because eventually the projects will be fulfilled and a new one will come forth. And sometimes the new project requires a 180-degree turn. And we have to drop everything to move on. And sometimes we do it kicking. But we do it no matter what, because we have no choice. Consciousness is an irreversible process. It can only go forward, whatever that means. Consciousness is an irreversible process. Constantly becoming aware of itself. We are the world. Any child, anywhere, any human being, alive or dead, is us. Any human being, fulfilled or unfulfilled, is us. Those who are starving in Ethiopia are us. Those who are filled in New York City are us. In the measure that the cocoon breaks and our wings come out of it, in that measure they are also fulfilled. Thank you.